Simon from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
You're on the air.
Hey, I love those Symphony of Science videos, by the way.
Good.
They're nice, aren't they?
One of the reasons I was calling is I watch the show a lot, and I notice a lot of people call in regarding issues of the nature of consciousness, and they often, it's like they're aware of kind of I guess what they call the hard problem of consciousness, like what David Chalmers, the philosopher, has kind of put forward as an argument. But they're always talking about in kind of like religious terms of spirits and souls. And I was just wondering if you're aware of that whole debate or in cognitive science about where qualia comes from, if it's an emergent property, if it's an illusion.
A little bit. You know, one of the things that religions seem to like to do is they like to find a mystery and then spin it, give it a religious interpretation. And the notion of the brain, which is a very, very complex organ in our body, and the emergent property of consciousness, that's just ripe area for that sort of behavior. And I think that's what you're seeing there. So it's a God of the gaps idea. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that as we sort of learn more about the brain and how intricate and interesting it is what's going on in there. I think that sort of interpretation is going to persist for many, many years. So I think you're just seeing the beginning of it.
I think what's, the reason that I kind of got motivated to call in is, and callers calling in, we had two callers call in and talk about reincarnation. I think that's part of the whole reason people can conceptualize that as even being a possibility is because there's this problem of, we can explain and possibly in absolute detail how the human brain works, but then we're still potentially left with the problem, again, potentially left with the problem of why the processes of perceiving color and things like that, perceiving light manifest as color. And like qualia and things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of mysterious stuff there, right?
I think it's necessary to point out that, like Francis Crick and Steven Pinker, there are people on the other side of this debate that don't agree that this is a hard problem.
Right, and that's why I say potentially. Chalmers is saying it's a problem, and you got Dennett saying it's overblown, and it's actually probably a smoke and mirrors act of the brain. I was just wondering what you guys, if you have a position on that, or I know it's a question mark, but after reading quite a bit on qualia, I failed to see the problem. I just can't wrap my brain around why it's a problem. But there's other people that seem to get it. But I've read it, and to me it's just like, why is this confusing for somebody? I don't understand why it's a problem. So I tend to lean toward Crick and Pinker on that. Right. I can see it being kind of a problem as to, I can see how somebody can make the argument that a color can't be reduced to material components. But then again, it could just exist and doesn't necessarily need a justification, just like the universe.
I just see it as this is how the brain perceives light.
Right. Well, yeah, and then there's the whole philosophical. I don't want to tie the show up too much. I just was wondering what your position was on it, and just to say that I think a lot of callers are kind of getting sort of aware of that, but they're thinking about it in religious terms, like, oh, that's your spirit, that's your soul,
sure.
Right. Anyway, well, thanks for taking the call.
Okay, Simon.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Julie, right?
Oops. Okay. Well, there are a lot of seemingly mysterious things, right? It's like our personalities persist over time, our identities persist over time.
Well, it's mysterious because neuroscience is new, considering in history. But what it has discovered already, to me, is just amazing and points to always, again and again, the brain. Mm-hmm. Everything ever successfully explained has been explained by a natural cause. Those things that are attributed to supernatural cause have not been explained. Mm-hmm. So so far there is natural causes or unexplained phenomenon. There is no supernatural explanation that has ever been verified. Sure.
Okay, let's go on to Dan in Hilton, New York. We've got a lot of New York and New Jersey folks calling. Hello, welcome.
Hi, Tracie and Dan. How are you today?
Good. What's up?
I'm an atheist from the burned-over district in upstate New York. And I've had a few conversations with theists, and one of the things I've found kind of underpinning a lot of belief is this concept of an intelligence, kind of a disembodied, free-floating intelligence, if you would. In fact, intelligence
that cares a lot about you.
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
But my response is that intelligence is really a measure of the function of the brain and necessarily contingent upon a brain being present, much like, if you would, you can't have color without light.
Correct.
You can't have intelligence without a brain. And I just wondered what your comments were about that.
I actually have a caller on YouTube. There's like a clip on YouTube where we took a call and somebody asked, like they said that they believed that God was disembodied intelligence, and I said, where have you ever seen intelligence without a brain or something to that effect? And he said, I never have. And I said, then why are you saying this?
Right.
What else can you say? Why are you making something up that you know does not align with reality? I don't know why a person would say such a thing.
Yeah, even in the computer world, you can make the analogy that the computer is like a brain and it's making decisions.
And the other thing that makes me angry about that,
it's the same sort of thing. Yeah.
They will use this. They'll say something about, God is intelligent, and then you say, and you'll be like, oh, okay, let's say, you have no concept of God. They come to you, they say, you tell me, what's your God model? Well, my God is intelligent. Okay, so then you make assumptions, like you're saying. You have this assumption, there's a brain. And the person starts talking, and they're like, well, but it's all spiritual. It's like, well, what is spirit? Well, it's like not material. Well, you're saying there's a non-material, I don't know about what is a non-material brain. And they're like, they get angry and say that it's like, well, you know what God is. And it's like, no, because what you're describing makes no sense. It's like telling me that you have a chair at home that's made of wood. And I say, oh, what kind of tree? And they say, oh, it did come from a tree. Okay, well, I don't know what kind of wood doesn't come from a tree. So at that point, I don't know what the word means anymore, because you just castrated the definition to the point where it no longer means what I understand it to mean. And it's the same thing with this intelligence. When you're saying that it's disembodied intelligence, that it exists non-materially without any kind of it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And if you can't explain it, don't expect me to respond to intelligence as though I understand it when you start taking away all the components that make it have any meaning.
Right. And I find that in many cases it does come down to the definition, but theists have never really thought about that before, and having them think about that can be a valuable lesson.
I agree.
Right.
Well,
okay,
yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, certainly one of the ways to have a lot of frustration is to have a debate with somebody where you don't agree on the definitions, right? And sometimes with these woo-woo words like spirit and these sorts of things, you might as well start there. And if you can't get that far, then you're hosed.
But it's frustrating when they use a definition that you are familiar with, and then partway through you find they're using it in a way that is completely unfamiliar, that has nothing to do with like the familiar definition.
Right.
And you're like, wait a minute, I understood this. I said I understood this word, and that word comes with baggage, with real world baggage that you want to dump and then still say that this exists. And it's like, no, that baggage has to come with it, or the word means nothing.
Right.
I mean,
right. Or invent a new word for the sake of this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, if I told
really
somebody,
mean, right?
intelligence, and I said, well, for example, this pen has intelligence. It's like, what am I talking about? I mean, what do I mean? Now you're wondering, what do I mean? You would start getting confused and saying, do you mean the kind of intelligence that, are you thinking this pen is thinking? I mean, that's what you would wonder. And until I explain that I didn't think that, if I do say that I think it is thinking, then comes the question, where the hell's the brain?
Right.
What is the capacity for this pen to think? And what is the capacity for nothing to think?
It's in the ballpoint for sure. I don't know.
Retractable.
Okay.
Retract that statement.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay.